Hey guys, Joseph Baba Ifa here on the channel, connecting you to your destiny once again, coming at you with a new video, how to dispose of Ifa offerings. And if you haven't had the opportunity, go ahead and tap on that subscribe button. Someone recently asked, Baba, how do we dispose of our offerings to Ifa and to the Orishas? The simplest answer to this is the garbage. Not to be funny or coy, but it is the quickest, most efficient, and sanitary form of disposal. Now, besides all of these things, the garbage actually became a spiritual position to dispose of offerings and ebbos or sacrifice in the Odu of Babayobe. And it was identified as Eshu's, or one of Eshu's, most primordial residences. So it's actually where he receives a lot of his offerings. A couple different Odus actually speak of the garbage. One of them is Okanabara, the other is Owani Wosa, and ultimately the Odu Babayobe speaks of Eshu residing within the garbage and receiving all those offerings to be able to take them to Olodumare so that the offering can be full, right? So besides being the most efficient and all those other characteristics, it's also one of the most spiritual and is the most basic format of disposal. Now, not only just because of the garbage, but it is very important to maintain hygiene and preserve the environment. The reason being is because the Orishas do not like pollution, litter, or clutter. And some of the Orishas that we're speaking most about within this theme is Osain, who is the Orisha of nature, the jungle, herbs, etc. He likes his domain maintained in a hygienic fashion. Another one is Olokun, who's the owner of the ocean, which is actually one of the places in nature that receives the most pollution, unfortunately, due to debris that's deposited there by us, the human race. And Obadala. Obadala being that he is the Orisha of purity and the white cloth, cleanliness and hygiene is very important to him, where him, along with the Orisha Fung Fung, as they're known, do not like being stained, do not like being in unhygienic environments, right? And ultimately, Olodumare himself, when we look at the different patakis that speak of this primordial deity or our creator, there's actually a couple patakis where he actually kicked people out of his home because they were dirty. For example, in the Odu Obebara, Olodumare lived with the doves, right? And they were all white, but they became complacent, being that they were living with God Almighty, and they became a little sloppy and a little lazy, and because of it, their hygienic habits really went down the tubes, causing them to kind of constantly becoming in contact with their fecal matter, and because of it, staining their wings and staining Olodumare's house to a point where he kicked them all out, right? Now, the pigeons, when they were actually kicked out of Olodumare's home, really didn't have anywhere to go, and they started succumbing to the natural, dangers that exist in the real world. So after this, they went for divination, where Urmila told them that they needed to perform sacrifice by way of cleansing themselves and plead to Olodumare to be able to go back to his home. And when they did so, and when they arrived at his door, he opened it for them and he said, "Have you guys learned your lesson?" And they're like, "Definitely. We'd rather go through the pains of cleaning up after ourselves than having to fend for ourselves in the wild," right? Because this Odu of Obebara actually speaks of how the pigeon became naturally prey to other species. And because of it, them cleansing themselves, at least the ones that did want to cleanse themselves, were let back into Olodumare's house. So right off the gate, Ifa, even though it's an indigenous religion, is a very hygienic and clean one, where, it's very organized and very regimented so that clutter and things like that really don't have a place. When we talk about the concept of it, it really has no place within the house of the Olorisha or Ifa priest either, because when we have clutter or things that are older and useless at some point, it's better to dispose of them, because these are actually pockets within the home where negative spirits or energies can actually have it, and because of it cause negative phenomena within the house, whether it be conflict, whether it be a lack of spiritual progress, any of these things. This is why we want to constantly be not only taking care of our Orisha and Ifa shrines, but our homes, so that these negative spiritualities don't have a place to take residence within our house, right? So all of these different Orishas. But we explained why Osain, Olokun, Obadala, and Olodumare really aren't fans of clutter. It's almost as if it was an insult to them. Because if we're talking about, if we're literally littering or, throwing garbage in places like, let's say, the forest or the jungle, or even acts of like deforestation, this is an insult to Osai, because there's no way he could be happy about this, because one, we're destroying his domain. And then apart from that, we're not respecting his children, which are the plants, or the people he interacts with, which are the plants, right? Another deity that probably wouldn't have a great, outlook on this would be Orisha Oro, right? Who also habits the forest. So it's very important that we maintain it clean and don't abuse nature, right? Another deity that we mentioned was Olokun, and the reason Olokun would have issues with anything that has to do with the ocean is because anything that habits the ocean belongs to Olokun, or is a child of Olokun. So when we're talking about debris and things like that being put into the ocean, it's killing fish, it's killing marine life. These are things that the Orisha is not a fan of. When we're talking about practice of Ifa, we don't want anything dying or transitioning unnecessarily. And when we have habits like this, especially even from a spiritual standpoint, where we have so much more of an obligation due to the fact that we know better, this is where sometimes we see the wrath from nature, right? Unfortunately, every now and again, a tsunami happens. Now, maybe this is because of the debris that we're putting in the ocean from time to time, or, the things that we do to Mother Nature that causes us or her to react negatively to us and, cause negative things, earthquakes, natural disasters, etc. And of course, the deity that is most primordial is Inleogere, or Mother Earth, right? We want to preserve her. In the Odu of Idete Kutang, it speaks of where it's a very negative thing to pollute the earth or mistreat her or not give her the tribute that she deserves. And one of the ways to do that is by littering or disposing of things incorrectly, right? That's why the first option really is the garbage, because it's organized. It's a way for us to be able to maintain our hygiene, especially from a social aspect and an environmental aspect. It maintains, us in a safe place, especially away from epidemics, where Ifa has so many odus that speak about that. And the reason it was caused was because of lack of hygienics, right? So it speaks of that, and the way we're able to maintain a pristine living environment, a place that we can be proud of, whatever country we're in, especially as Orisha and Ifa priests and followers, is by maintaining the hygiene of where we do live. So we have that responsibility, being we are a nature-based religion, to maintain the aesthetics of where we live and the hygiene of where we live, right? So we spoke of that and how the Orishas would react to it. There are times when offerings do have to be taken to natural positions. Most popular ones are going to be like a four corners, the woods, the ocean, any of these things. The idea is that we do it in the most biodegradable form possible. So whatever items we're putting into these natural spaces or public spaces in nature, the most important thing is that we don't leave behind a footprint, right, biologically. That the things that we put there are able to be reassimilated into nature without creating this clutter, right? So that may mean removing that plastic bag, removing that paper bag, removing that cloth. Anything that is not going to be reassimilated should be removed, right? And it really isn't going to take away from the essence of a ceremony, because all of these things are modern, right? Most of the time, the things that were used to be able to encompass ebbos or sacrifices were large types of leaves, like the malanga leaf or the cassava leaf, right? The elephant ear. Other things were like made out of terracotta, and even though they may be jagged at the moment, at the end of the day, over time, they will erode because they are made out of clay. These are things that we can put back into nature without leaving too much of a footprint, right? But other things like plastics and, things that take so long to be able to reassimilate, this is ultimately littering. And these are the things we want to avoid. So if we do have to dispose of anything in a place that is natural, whether it be the river, especially bodies of water, public spaces, make sure we're doing it in the most biodegradable way, and make sure we're doing it in the most decent of ways, right? Because when we're talking about animal sacrifices and having to dispose of them, once again, the garbage is the most hygienic way of doing it if the animal is not going to be consumed. But if you did want to place it in a natural space like the woods or anything like that where animals are actually going to consume it, perfectly fine. just as long as we do it in the most discreet and respectful way possible. Avoid neighborhoods, avoid schools, you know, that way young children don't have to come in contact with that. It can be a little traumatizing, especially if there isn't their culture. And once again, you know, with time, any carcasses or whatnot can become unsightly to the eyes and nose, right? So things to consider so that we aren't viewed as being, you know, being nuisances. There's no reason we can't practice an indigenous faith in the most sanitary way possible and social way possible, and at the same time without having to censor our beliefs. So we spoke about using biodegradable materials, removing plastics, papers, avoiding neighborhoods and schools. We spoke of, you know, the preservation of bodies of water. We spoke about the disposal of animal sacrifices. Now, one thing that's also very important is the disposal can sometimes be the most important and crucial part of any ceremony, right? Usually that last step is the one that kind of seals a ceremony. So you want to make sure you do it in the most correct way possible, and no one's trying to censor ourselves so that we can't place things where they need to be placed, but also understand everything is situational. As soon as something touches that specific area, everything is immediately done. You know, let's say in the case of the ebbo, where you have to take an ebbo to a four corners, as soon as the ebbo touches the four corners, Eshu has just taken it to heaven and fulfilled its role. So if need be, based on circumstances, you can only leave it there for a couple minutes and then you do have to take it to the garbage. It doesn't take away the essence of what you're doing. Everything is situational. Use your discretion. But it is very important that disposal is done correctly and in a humane fashion so that it doesn't go against nature and the moral laws of nature and, you know, society, so that things can flow, right? But every different Orisha spirituality or deity has specific places in nature that vibrate with it. So for example, if you have an offering that you provided to Eshu or Elegua, a four corners is acceptable. The garbage is acceptable. The forest is acceptable. If we're talking about Ogun, the forest is acceptable along with Ochosi because they're hunter deities. For Ogun specifically, maybe the railroad tracks. Once again, if we're talking about Ochum or any of the feminine deities, river deities, you know, usually a river or a body of water. Olokun, the ocean or a lake. Shango, the palm tree. Obatala, usually a hill, right? Or some people even say sacred places of worship like temples, right? Agayu, once again, mountain type or even the desert. I wouldn't recommend getting too close to a volcano. Oya would be the marketplace. Cemetery as well. Egum, cemetery or marketplace. You know, various deities. For Osain, the forest. You know, they usually have a space in nature that vibrates with them where they like to manifest and receive their offerings. And this is in the Odu of Oyekum Meji, where all of the different Orishas went to different places in nature when they were coming down from heaven. And because of it, that's where they kind of vibrate and where their energy resides. Orumila is actually an interesting case because in Oyekum Meji, he actually ended up in the home. The natural manifestation of Ifa is actually within the home, or that energy. Other places, being that he's associated with Oshun, is a river, is another acceptable place to take Orumila's offerings. You know, or even the sacred trees that are you know, associated with Ifa. The Araba tree or the Seiba tree is another one where you can pretty much take all of their offerings, as long as we're doing it in the most sanitary and hygienic of ways. But these are all the different options you have when it comes to disposing of offerings to Ifa and Orisha. So guys, thank you so much for watching. 3,000 subscribers. Thank you very much. Very humbling. So happy to see so many people interested in Ifa. If you're interested in consultations, please contact 407-440-2086 to possibly have an Odu interpretation session or a consultation with me, Joseph Baba Ifa. Another way to schedule is by visiting botanicacandlesandmore.com. Also, another place to be able to get all of your spiritual products, to be able to perform your processes and habits, along with Orisha clothing and a bunch of other great stuff we have on there. If you haven't had the opportunity, please go ahead and like, comment, share, and subscribe. New videos coming all the time. Thank you so much for the support, guys. Joseph Baba Ifa, myself, as well as Botanica Candles and More appreciates you. And until next time, please take care of yourselves and each other. Take care, guys.